Welcome to our 5 on 5. Please be joined again by Senator Ron Wyden. Senator, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. The president has indicated he will announce his nomination for a Supreme Court justice next week. It takes Senate approval to make that a selection. What direction do you think the president will go with this nomination?
He obviously has a list, and what I'm doing this week, we had a town hall meeting yesterday with almost 500 people, many of them asking questions about the court nomination, and I want to make sure Oregonians understand what's at stake. For example, the Trump administration wants to roll back the airtight protections for those with a pre-existing condition. I was one of the ringleaders in terms of getting that into the law. I wrote a bill with loophole-free protections so that the insurance companies could not discriminate against you. The Trump administration wants to get rid of that, and there is a case wending its way through the lower courts, and my sense is the next Supreme Court justice will surely vote on this. Now, I believe political change doesn't start in Washington, D.C. and trickle down. It's bottoms up, and I believe if the American people know that what's at stake here is the prospect of going backwards on health care, going back to the days when health care was for the healthy and wealthy, they're going to weigh in on this appointment.
Fire season is well underway. You've talked before about new legislation that ensures there's sufficient resources to fight wildfires. Is it making a difference today?
Obviously, this looks like it is going to be a very difficult fire season. These fires are getting bigger, they're getting hotter. They're not your grandfather's fires, and they are hitting us earlier. Right now in Northern California, apparently, there are communities where there's just smoke practically everywhere. So the challenge is to make sure that we get all the tools in place to deal with it. So, for example, Senator Merkley and I are trying to make sure that folks in the Guard are trained in order to deal with the fires. I want to make sure we have the right number of tankers at the right time. The Congress has passed my law to end fire borrowing, so we no longer raid the prevention fund, and that should stop some of the biggest fires. But there is so much heavy lifting to do, and it used to be fire season was pretty short, came towards August, you thought about it at the end of the summer. Now it's practically year-round, and May was very dry. That is always a signal of what's to come.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll have much more in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to our 5 on 5. Again, we're here with Senator Ron Wyden. Senator, there are Oregonians that are seeking legislation to make sure their constitutional rights are protected. Can you address the sentiment that they're feeling, and is there such a need for protections at a county or state level?
The founding fathers always thought that we had to be very vigilant in terms of protecting our liberties. They didn't think you could take a day off from the Bill of Rights. So this Fourth, I'm calling it First Amendment Fourth. We've had discussions about making sure that people are free from religious persecution, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press. And by the way, I want to thank KOBI today publicly, because sometimes people don't think that the news business represents any kind of personal threats to people. Well, my view is that local news does tend to get people pretty riled up sometimes at a school board or a county commission meeting, and we don't know all the facts about the Maryland case, but there are 5 dead journalists who are practicing some very good local journalism.
Speaking of the amendments, the president's immigration policies, you've asked people to protest them, if you will, on the 4th of July. Where do you think the president's policy will end up?
Well, it's not clear, but certainly we are seeing more and more Americans from all sides of the political spectrum saying that this isn't working. For example, 19 of the Cracker Jack ICE agents, these are people who have been dedicated to that agency, recently spoke out and said that the immigration policies are so flawed they are taking away from the agency's national security responsibilities. So my sense is a lot of these policies, and it's the policies, really need to have a complete overhaul.
As we get closer to the November election, fall will be here in no time, no doubt. How do you see things mapping out in Congress on Election Day?
Well, my sense is the public is really looking at the issues. And let me give you an example. Last week in the Senate Finance Committee, I was asking questions of the Health Department head, Alex Azar, who said, and this was a direct quote, that he hoped that the big pharmaceutical companies would exercise pricing restraint. Well, today in the Wall Street Journal, we read that Pfizer has been jacking up its prices. So I think that the American people, when I and others tell them that this theory of the president and Alex Azar, that they hope that the big pharmaceutical companies will exercise pricing restraint, it isn't working out too well.
Senator, thanks for making time for us
Thanks
today.
for having me.
Good to see you. Stay with us. We'll be right back.